welcome to the third live session of our Countdown campaign, Intra-African Trade Fair 2021, which is going to be taking place in Rwanda to the 12th of September 2021, will provide a unique and valuable platform for business to explore an integrated African market with a combined GDP of over $2.5 trillion, created under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. And ladies and gentlemen, why we're here today, we're going to be discussing this very important agreement and how we unlock this agreement on the African continent. The successful launch of this agreement on the 7th of July 2019 of the Operation FTA has brought into focus the great potential for trade, investment, and social development across the continent. We all know that in the context of the global pandemic that we've all been faced with, this discussion therefore becomes very critical. We've got some really important and distinguished guests with us that you're going to hear from shortly. But before we get to that, I just want to run through a few housekeeping rules. Most of our meetings, as I'm sure all of you experience, are virtual. So there's some rules that we need to follow. So firstly, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there are multiple application engagement tools that you can actually use. All the engagement tools are resizable and movable, so feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. You can expand your slide area, or you can maximize it full screen by clicking on the arrows in the top right-hand corner. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A engagement tool at the bottom there. We will try to answer these questions during the webcast, but if a full answer is needed or we run out of time, it will be answered later via email. Please know that we are capturing all questions. For the best viewing experience, we recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background that could cause issues. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so that you can hear the presenters. Some networks cause the slides to advance more slowly than others, so logging off your VPN is recommended. If your slides are behind, pushing F5 on your keyboard will refresh the page. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help Engagement tool at the bottom of your screen. So that takes care of all the housekeeping rules, and I hope that, and I really trust that we have a really great experience on today's virtual session. So first up, I'd like to introduce one of our distinguished speakers, Mr. Anton Kajangwe, who is a trade and investment policy professional with the Ministry of Trade and Industry of Rwanda. Anton oversees the ministry's domestic and international trade and investment-related matters, intellectual property rights, consumer protection, and competition laws and policies. He is also the ministry's chief trade negotiator. So we're very privileged to have with us Anton, who is going to take us through the potential benefits arising from country day participation in IATF. Over to you, Anton. Anton, are you there? Okay, I think Anton is there. Can we get his slides up, please? Hi, Anton, are you there? Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, if we can just be patient to allow Anton to set up his presentation. Yes. Anton, are you ready to go?
Hello, Mr. Singhan. Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go
Can you hear
ahead.
me?
Yes, absolutely clearly.
Hello?
Please go ahead. Anton, we can hear you. You can go ahead. I think Anton is having a few technical issues.
Can you hear me?
Okay, we seem to be getting him coming on board. Anton, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me? Good.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear everybody? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. Apologies for that. I guess that is the world we live in today.
Yes, yes,
Great,
yes. No, we totally understand. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for this to share with you a bit about Rwanda Day, and then also participate in this countdown webinar. Indeed, as the government of Rwanda is hosting the IATF 2021, we're thrilled by this opportunity to once again interact and grow intra-Africa trade and business and investments. And we're looking forward to welcoming you all to Kigali very soon. Shortly, I'll just go through my presentation, really just highlighting some of the key investment and trade opportunities that you will get to explore more once you attend the IATF 2021 and you're able to participate in the country day by Rwanda. The implementation of the AfCFTA agreement. The agreement holds a special place for Rwanda, not just in terms of having been the country, but also what it represents for intra-Africa trade.
Hi, I think it seems like we've just lost Tony. We can actually come back to him as soon as we've got him back on track. But in the meantime, maybe we should just move on to the program itself. As soon as we get Anton back, we can then get him back to provide his presentation. Now, over the past few years, Africa's creative industries, led by a generation of youthful creatives, have had a major impact on the global stage. creatives are redefining the way Africa is perceived by breaking down stereotypes and negative perceptions, driven mainly by access to technologies, platforms, and content that alter traditional notions of borders and audiences. As the population of the African continent continues to increase exponentially, governments are concerned about how best to tackle the increasing unemployment rates among the youth population. The creative industry and the cultural industries, which actually includes the film, television, music, fashion, visual arts, and the design sectors, provide opportunities to boost job creation, creating youth employment, reducing poverty, and diversifying the economy across the continent. The IATF platform actually provides a great opportunity to promote the creative industries in Africa, and it's going to be one of our very strong areas of focus at next year's event. The AfCFTA, together with its partners, will continue to enable policies that will ensure that Africa's creatives continue to shine, not only as individuals, but also as an internationally acknowledged sector. The IATF2021 will create a creative program aimed at showcasing these policies and interventions, as well as celebrating the creatives themselves. Over the 7 days of the IATF event in Rwanda next year, that culminate in a high-profile 2-day creative industry summit that will see some of Africa's top talents sharing their experiences, insights, and views on the most relevant topics that impact on Africa's creative industries. In addition, there will be an exhibition which will host a live stage and space for expertly curated daily performances and creative showcases. Informal discussions will be held with some of Africa's most successful creatives, relevant and impactful panels, interactive activations, and more. Encompassing the range of creative industries, as I said earlier, from fashion, design, the visual arts, the deco and performance industries, music, dance, theater, and I could go on. But let's take a look at this video. As they say, a picture speaks 1,000 words. Let's take a look at this video about the creative industries in Africa.
Hello, my name is Kibonen Fee. I'm from Cameroon, Central Africa, and I'm founder and creative director of Kibonen New York, an Afro-fused fashion brand based out of New York City. I am a member of the AfCFTA Creative Africa Advisory Group. I still hope to achieve a lot more in the fashion industry, not just in establishing my brand all over the world, but also to being a force and one of the people transforming the fashion industry, being a real true instrument to help provide structure and direction in how fashion should run, such that the billion-dollar industry that it is actually effective in the continent of Africa. It is so important for fashion to be developed because through fashion, thousands, millions of jobs can be created. Through fashion, I personally believe poverty will be alleviated from the continent of Africa if we can develop all the different aspects and parts of fashion, creating jobs, letting people express themselves. And this is just going to help transform the way we see things and really, really help in the alleviation of poverty in Africa. It is very important to have fashion in the creative economy of Africa. The reason I say so is because fashion is a turning point for musicians, for actors. You know, we sell the culture of Africa so amazingly through fashion. So having fashion is so vital because it encompasses everything and brings all the different creative industries together. The next year's Intra-African Trade Fair is one of the events I'm really looking forward to because it's going to be a melting pot. It's going to bring people from different industries, different parts of the world come together, and I'm really inviting the creatives to register and be a part of this trade fair. It's going to be life transforming and it's going to be the next step. It's going to be the now of what we have to do for the fashion industry in Africa. I would like to invite all the creatives to join me for the Intra-Africa Trade Fair 2021 in Kigali, Rwanda, powered by Afrik-Exim Bank. Join me and you'll be inspired to action. Thank you.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the Creatives Africa Showcase. As you heard, you need to join us next year to get the best of what Africa has to offer from a creative industries perspective. We're going to move on with the program now, and I'm going to now introduce our distinguished guest, who's going to be part of the panel discussion this morning on the revival of the African economy and discussions around the AfCFTA. So, we have a number of distinguished panel members with us. I'd like to introduce firstly Mr. John Rocha, who is currently the Chief Director, Trade Invest Africa at the Department of Trade and Industry here in the Republic of South Africa. Mr. Rocha also worked as Project Manager for the Southern Africa Regional Gas Task Force at the NEPAD Business Foundation, and he held several senior positions over the last 20 years in the trade and investment space. So we've got a lot of experience in Mr. John Rocha as far as trade and investment is concerned on the African continent. Also, a very experienced gentleman by the name of Mr. Guy Beng, who has an MBA in international business from INSEAD in France. Mr. Beng has more than 30 years of experience in French, working with French multinational companies. He was also appointed as Managing Director of Apex CI, which is a Cote d'Ivoire export promotion agency. So, Mr. Beng, thank you for joining us. Also very highly experienced in the field of trade and investment. We then have Mr. Jean Bertrand, who is a senior trade expert with over 16 years of professional experience in trade policy formulation, negotiations, and of course, the implementation in Africa and Asia Pacific regions. He is currently the strategic advisor to the AU Commissioner for Trade and Industry on a wide range of trade and related issues, including negotiations of the AfCFTA agreement, which we're going to be discussing today. And then we have Dr. Asbera Asare, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Export Promotion Authority. Dr. Asare has over 27 years of experience working in a variety of corporate and public environments around trade and investment. She is also a corporate and cross-cultural trainer and strategy enthusiast known for extensive knowledge in integrated communications and organizational development. Panel members, welcome, and thank you for affording us with your time today to discuss this all-important issue affecting the continent. My first question to you guys, and maybe we can start off with Mr. Beng, and I'd like to go around each panel member with some opening remarks about what do you think, firstly, just share with us your role, and why do you think it's important to participate in a platform like the Intra-African Trade Fair that's happening in Rwanda next year? Mr. Beng, can we start with you, please?
Yes, thank you very much. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Hello? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, Mr. Beng. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for organizing this event. Directly going to your question, that the AfCFTA is very important for the private sector, and as you know, my company is a trade promotion organization in Cote d'Ivoire. We are dealing both on issue of export promotion, regional integration, by extension also AfCFTA, promotion of development of the private sector. Participating in these events means that we will talk about our constraints. We'll not have the member of this panel share the experiences. And we are glad to participate to this meeting. My answer for this first question. Hello?
Thank you, Mr. Beng.
Hello?
Yes. We just lost you there for a moment. Can you just repeat the last sentence, please?
I just say that participating to this panel is very important because we can share experiences from the other partner and see how we can best have the lesson learned for the implementation of the agreement at the private sector level.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Beng. Thanks for those opening insights. Can I bring in Dr. Asari? Can you share with us as well your experience, especially in Ghana, and what it means to be part of this IATF platform? Dr. Asari? Dr. Asari, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Can you give us your opening remarks, please, on really why do you see the IATF platform as being important, especially from a Ghana perspective?
Good morning, and the technical issues here and there, but I'm excited to be here. And I think this is a very important platform for us to discuss everything that is good for Africa. I think the AITF platform is the best platform that we have had so far. And being in Kigali for the program is very exciting for us because we think when Africa gets together, we get to talk about what is important to Africa, what we have to do to uplift Africa to the greater heights that it deserves to be. And so for us in Ghana, this is a very, very important occasion, and we are looking forward to it, to meet our brothers and sisters from the continent, to see how we can exchange ideas, how we can look at what we each bring to the table, and how we can look at all the value chains that pertain to our various countries and how to develop them and work together to trade amongst ourselves. It's for us a platform to trade amongst ourselves and see how we can develop as a continent. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So that's it in brief.
Tu commences ça? Hein? Tu as pu avoir ça?
Okay. So that's it in brief.
Okay, we seem to have a problem with Mr. Rocha. Do we have Mr. Jean Azapmo on the line? Can we get opening remarks from Mr. Azapmo?
I am here.
Okay, we seem to have a problem with Mr. Rocha. Hello, Mr. Azapmo, can you hear me? Mr. Jean Azapmo on the line. Mr. Azapmo, can we have your opening remarks? Mr. Azapmo, are you there?
I am here.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Thank you. Could you give us your opening remarks and what does it mean for you to be part of the IATF platform?
Well, thank you so much, moderator, and greetings to you all who are joining us. on this third virtual event on the countdown to the IATF 2021. Like you said in the introduction, my name is Jean-Bertrand Azapmo, Principal Advisor to the African Union Commissioner for Trade and Industry. And it is a pleasure to be part of this conversation. So for us at the African Union, we are one of the organizers, co-organizing with the Afrexim Bank, this intra-African trade fair since 2018. And for us, it means a lot to be part of this great African initiative. For two reasons, at least. Firstly, as you probably know, trade information is a key impediment to intra-African trade, in particular when it comes to availability of information. So the Boosting Intra-African Trade Action Plan contains a number of recommendations, one of which is to provide a platform to the buyers and sellers across the continent to get together and be able to showcase of what is available, get together and conclude business deals. So for us, the IATF help us to implement that particular trade policy recommendation of the Boosting Intra-African Trade. The other reason why it is also very important for us to be part of the IATF initiative, it is because it's actually one of the first deliverables of the African Continental Free Trade Area. When we launched the first edition of the IATF, that was really, a matter of implementing the AfCFTA. So for us, it's about bridging the information gap to trade information. It's about implementing continental trade policies, implementing the AfCFTA. It's about walking the talk, as someone would say, because very often we have all these strategies, all these agreements, but some of which are rarely implemented. So for us, it's very important to be part of the IATF, and we really see it as, a conduit, a tool that will help make the AfCFTA become a reality. Thank you for now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Azapmo. I mean, obviously, the African Union has a very important role to play in this process. So thanks for your opening remarks. I'd like to bring in Mr. John Rocha from the what you call who can also add some value to this discussion in terms of his opening remarks and really the reasons as to why you think the IATF platform is such an important platform. Mr. Rocha? Mr. Rocha, can you hear us? We're not getting sound from Mr. Rocha. I think there's a problem on his side. I'm still not getting any sound coming from Mr. Rocha. Okay, whilst we're trying to sort out that problem, let's start talking about the real issues now regarding the African economy and the AfCFTA. And I'd like to pass a general question to all panel members. And again, maybe if we can go in the order of Mr. Beng and then work our way downwards. And the question is, how important are import and export councils in terms of reviving the economies in the country, especially in the context of this pandemic that we're faced with? So when you respond, can you give us a sense as to what is happening currently in your markets in the context of this pandemic, and how will the AfCFTA unlock opportunities for trade and investment. Can we start with Mr. Beng, please? Thank you. Mr. Beng, are you with us? Okay, maybe we can move on to Dr. Asare. Dr. Asare, if you can hear me, can you maybe comment on that question?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Did you get the question that I asked you? Yes, we can hear you very clearly.
I did.
Okay, can you give us your response, please?
Okay, so in Ghana, we have tried to put some mitigation
Please unmute
systems in place.
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, who's speaking?
I can hear some feedback. Do I go on or do I wait?
Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Asare. Please go ahead.
We have had issues with the COVID, but in spite of that, we are looking forward to how to operationalize the AfCFTA to take advantage of what it provides, what it seeks to provide, and the fact that the headquarters even sits in our country. So we have a national export development strategy that is being put in place, and all the organizations and all the organizations in the export ecosystem and import ecosystem came together to put this national export development strategy in place. And we are rolling it out and breaking it down so that we can get our SMEs to understand what the AfCFTA stands for. Because when it was launched in our country, so many of our people didn't know what actually it stood for. So what is we're going to do is to start a roadshow, going to all corners of our country, meeting all our exporters, meeting all the people in the export ecosystem to explain to them, to break it down to them why the AfCFTA and what it is going to do to help bring trade, trade together on the African continent, how we are going to take advantage of what it's going to bring onto the African continent. And so we have a whole agenda of taking advantage of the AfCFTA and explaining it and putting in place the mechanisms that will help our exporters to take advantage. Some of these interventions we will be doing. I'm getting feedback and very distracting.
Yeah, sorry, we just had some interference there. Okay. Can you just repeat the last two lines, please?
Yeah. So we have put in place interventions to help our exporters take advantage of the AfCFTA. And some of these interventions are our export training school, which is going to actually, it's already in existence, but we have upped it a little, and we are going to put all our exporters through this school to teach them stuff concerning packaging, design, anything that is going to make their products accepted on the international market, so to say, especially in Africa. And so we have the export school. We also have the impact hub, where small and medium enterprises that are not savvy in technology or don't even have the use of the internet or computers in their workplaces will have the opportunity to come to our impact hub and use what we have, the facility that we have there. We have mini offices for them to use. We have libraries. We have research centers that they can take advantage of. We also have the Standards Authority, actors from the Food and Drugs Authority, and all of the organizations that they would we have in one building. So
okay, Doctor, sorry, that's really great.
Help people to take need to put
Thank you. That's
their products onto the African markets. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that input. I mean, I think that, you've touched on quite a few major projects and programs that you guys in Ghana are involved with, which should definitely yield some results through the AfCFTA. But can you just give us a sense as to what are some of the opportunities, do you think, that the AfCFTA presents for a country like Ghana? Could you give us what those opportunities are?
I think it opens up the African continent for us to go everywhere, because initially we would be trading with mainly the West African market in ECOWAS, but now we have the opportunity to trade in all of Africa. I think this is what we are so excited about. We are not so limited to ECOWAS now, but we have the opportunity to also trade in other parts of Africa. If all things go well.
Okay.
This is a
okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. John, are you still there, Mr. Rocha? John, are you there? I'm not getting any response from Mr. Rocha. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Let's go to Mr. Azapmo again. Mr. Azapmo, obviously for the African Union, you were the architects and the drivers of the AfCFTA. How important do you think are export and import councils to unlocking opportunities within the AfCFTA? Can you give us some comments from your side on that issue, please?
Well, thank you so much, moderator. I think export promotion councils or agencies will have a critical role to play when it comes to raising awareness on the potential, the opportunities under the AfCFTA market. Now, what is very important is it is the preferential regime that is being established, because up until now, yes, I mean, African countries can trade with each other, but with few exceptions, in particular when it comes to regional economic communities, there are still tariffs in place. So what is important here is the removal of tariffs. What is also important is the mechanisms that is in place to ensure removal of non-tariff barriers, which are also very important. So we see the export promotion councils, agencies as, one of those institutions that will really help the private sector on the continent take advantage of the AfCFTA market. And this is critical because in as much as we are putting this preferential regime in place, we would like to make sure that the African private sector really is the main beneficiary, because if they do not take advantage of it, then others will come in. So export promotion councils have a very, very critical role to play at the national level. Now, at the continental level, it's true, we do not have a Pan-African export promotion a council or agency. But nevertheless, the Commission is also taking advantage of some of the private sector organizations that exist at the regional or at the continental level to promote the AfCFTA opportunities. For example, we are working with the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce. We're working with the Pan-African Private Sector Trade and Investment Committee. We are working with the Afro Champions to raise awareness, to sensitize the African private sector on the opportunities that will be created under the AfCFTA. We are also organizing special events. I mean, we've started those events. And here I want to make reference to the AfCFTA Business Forum, which was launched in 2018. And last year we had the second edition. This year, again, we'll be having another edition. So we're also having, these kind of get together to sensitize the African private sector on the AfCFTA opportunities. Because when you come to think about it, 1.27 billion consumers, it is not 100 million consumers. It is not 200. It is a billion. And the African private sector have an opportunity. They have an opportunity to really upscale their production. They have an opportunity to take advantage of the economies of scales that are created and to really make trade the engine of economic growth that we all would like to see on the continent. So the final thing we are doing is we are also engaging the African private sector through what we call the Trade Policy Dialogue Forum, and this is an opportunity which brings together not just the private sector, but also other key stakeholders to sensitize them, to raise awareness on the opportunities that are created through the AfCFTA. So we are very much ready to support the Export Promotion Council at the national level or at the regional level. But like I said, we also have these other avenues that we are pursuing at the continental level. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zapmo. I'm going to just go back to John again. John, if you're there, can you just respond? I think that we're now on a question regarding, the export and import councils, and how important do you think these councils are to unlock opportunities from the AfCFTA? John? Okay, I think we still seem to be having problems getting sound from John. It seems like he can hear us, but we're just not getting his voice over. Just moving on in terms of, and I think I'd like to bring in Anton. Anton, if you're still there, I'd also like to, obviously Rwanda has seen double-digit growth for a number of years now, and it's an important market on the African continent. How do you see this AfCFTA playing out, and what opportunities do you think the agreement brings for a country like Rwanda? Anton, are you with us? Okay, it seems like... Anton, are you there?
No, it's John Russia.
Oh, John. Oh, wow. Great. Okay, that's excellent. John, thanks for joining us. Sorry about the technical glitches. The question that we were discussing now, and some of the speakers have made some really important input here, is how do you think import and export councils can play a role in unlocking the opportunities of the AfCFTA, particularly from a South African perspective? John, if you can share some insight on that.
Thank you, Sagan. Somehow there's an echo coming back, but thank you for inviting us, and I'm sorry for all the technical glitches. But from a South African perspective, within the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, we have a branch that is responsible for export promotion, development, and also for the promotion of outward investment by South African companies across the globe. The department set up Trade Invest Africa, which is the unit for which I am the chief director. And this unit is responsible for promoting South Africa's trade relations and investments into the rest of the continent. Now, as part of our strategy of engaging, we have created about 18 export councils covering a wide range of sectors and industry, from textile and clothing, footwear, to leather, in mining capital equipment, in mining processing equipment, agriculture, also in fruit, basically all the major industries or sectors of the South African economy. As part of our effort to support these platforms, we also then work together with our companies to enable them to participate in events such as the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. They participate in a number of national pavilions that are organized around the continent. We also support companies to undertake what we call as outwards trade missions, where we take them to specific markets around the continent. And we also support African companies to come to South Africa to look for suppliers, or even to negotiate and identify potential buyers of their products where that capacity exists. Now, all this work is supported financially by our department. It's part of our budgetary allocation. And together with these bodies, we have developed an integrated national export strategy, which is currently being revisited. And we believe that a platform like the IATF is a very useful platform, because it helps us to communicate effectively with many of our trading partners around the continent. And in fact, with COVID, to come to another question that you asked, COVID-19 has heavily impacted our economy. As we know, many borders were closed. And there are a number of African countries that use our ports as transit ports, to both for importing goods and also for exporting goods to different markets around the world. And we saw in certain instances our trade dropping as deep as about 50%. So it was quite drastic. Now, from the 1st of October, we are going to reopen our borders. There is a process of deciding which borders are going to be reopened. But as we know, we have to do so taking into account the need to maintain public safety and security. We have also, as a result of this, began to organize a series of virtual webinars and engagements, and including looking at also virtual exhibitions. We have already organized between July and now with Zambia. We have done one with Ghana. I had a colleague from Ghana talking there today. In fact, one of the reasons why I was a bit divided is we were just completing a trade and investment webinar with Mozambique, talking about COVID, talking about the measures that both countries need to take to move forward. And during the next couple of months, we intend to do similar events in East Africa, and also perhaps, if an opportunity arises, North Africa. And we hope to roll these things out as we move along. Now, one other point that I think is important for us to share is that from a South African perspective, our approach towards the continent is anchored on three key pillars. One is trade, which we believe is important. We need to increase significantly the percentage of trade, intra-Africa trade, which is hovering at about 16-17%, as we all know. We need to ratify that. But we also have a huge desire to work with our sister countries around the continent to promote industrialization. Because if we are going to have intra-Africa trade, it simply means that more and more African countries need to be producing, more and more African countries need to start buying from one another. And we also need to promote investment in our infrastructure. At the moment, if we look at our logistics and supply chain connectivity, from a South African perspective, we are better connected with many markets around the world than we are with one another. And I think if we are talking about intra-Africa trade, we cannot ignore the need for us to establish very efficient and cost-effective supply chain connections with West Africa, from a maritime perspective, looking at all the transport modes, sea, air, road, and rail. We need to look at it, and I think that explains why we put such a strong emphasis on infrastructure. And I would like to invite all the countries participating and listening to this debate that we should begin that conversation. The last point that I think is very important. I had one of the panelists talking about that if we don't act, we may miss the opportunity. What I think is important that as African countries we need to start considering is we really need to start looking very strongly at import substitution. We're spending billions and billions of dollars importing food, importing petroleum products, importing goods that we should be producing within our own continent. So we need to look very seriously at that. The second one is the question of preferential procurement. We are spending billions, over almost $400 billion annually in projects that are breaking ground in terms of in the construction sector since 2016. Yet, when we look at who's building those projects, we see that the majority of the money is spent paying foreign companies to come and do work in Africa. And I think we need to address it. If we want our economies to grow, if we want to promote inter-Africa trade, we must make sure that the railway tracks that are being used to build the railway tracks need to be made in Africa. We need to make sure that the steel products being utilized in building constructions and other infrastructure needs to be made in Africa. And I think these are the discussions that we need to have. And we believe the IATF may provide a platform for us to start having that conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much, John. I think you make some really powerful points, especially around the issues of making sure that we start trading with each other as African countries. And that's really what the IATF platform is all about. It's about encouraging countries to start trading with each other. And I think the AfCFTA provides a great opportunity to unlock those opportunities. I'd like to come to Mr. Beng. Mr. Beng, from a Cote d'Ivoire's point of view, obviously you see some opportunities that can come out of the AfCFTA. Can you give us a sense of what those opportunities are? And whilst I have you, we have a question from Professor Michelet Motina, who asked, what are the business opportunities in water and energy in countries like the Ivory Coast? So maybe if you can touch on that question as well. Thank you, Mr. Beng.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Coming back to you again. First of all, I would like to, before coming back to this question, I would like to give general consideration about AfTA and Cote d'Ivoire, and then move to the role of the Export Council, and then answer to your question. You know that Cote d'Ivoire has ratified the agreement. The Ministry of Commerce has created what we call a Comité National pour la Zone de Libre-Échange, a special body at the government level to deal with awareness on this agreement. That's very important. And the private sector is also involved with our organization and other ones. That's very important. And our principle is that free trade goes well beyond simply removing barriers. It's very important. That's why we at the Export Promotion Board, we are helping first the company to pass this crisis. We have done the same thing as in Ghana, assisting SME, talking with the custom so that to facilitate them, talking with the bank for trade finance, and having different webinars to sensitize them on how to pass this important issue. This has gone. But what is important is how to deal with issue concerning African Continental Free Trade Agreement. That's why we have passed an agreement with ITC and African Bank, which is in a program which is called how to deal with the problem concerning African Continental Free Trade Agreement. We have a group of exporters in Cote d'Ivoire. We are following a program which is called How to Deal with IATF. In this program, what is important is, first, we are assessing the export readiness. That's very important. And then we introduce them to market research and development, and how to help them in export logistics, and how to help them in trade finance and payment, and how to help them in risk management, and how to help them on standard issue. This program is piloted by organization and ITC and African Bank, and is also, we have other partners, which is Nigeria, also Nigeria Export Council, which is in the program, as well as the Rwanda Development Organization. That's very important. In this, we try to help SME to first to be aware of what is the agreement, and second, to give them the skill to benefit from this organization. This is very important. So this program is starting now. It's going to last at 3 months, and then it's going to be extended in other countries, specifically in West Africa, in the zone. We have an organization which is called West Africa Export Promotion Organization, under the leadership of WAIMU. We're going to extend this program if it's successful. So we are very excited that African Bank and ITC is teaming up with Nigeria Export Promotion Board and Rwanda Development Board to implement this program. And coming back to opportunities, of course, you know that Côte d'Ivoire is the first world producer of cocoa. That's very important. There are a lot of opportunities in infrastructure, both in electricity and water. So I invite the panelists who need to have information to get in touch with me, and I will give all the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Beng. Thanks for those inputs. And I think obviously a country like Côte d'Ivoire is important to the economy of Africa as well. I want to bring in Anton again. Anton, if you can hear me, the question relates really to Rwanda's role and the opportunities that the AfCFTA presents for Rwanda. Can you give us a sense as to what are some of those opportunities? And the same question that was asked: what are those opportunities in the energy sector in Rwanda? If you can touch on that as well.
Sure, Sugan. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Indeed, the AfCFTA. Great. The AfCFTA holds a lot of potential and promise, not just for Rwanda, but for a number of countries across the continent. I believe just in terms of the economies of scale that are to be gained from this agreement. For a long time in the past, Africa has been trading in silos, whether those are individual countries or smaller regions, but now really the entire continent is open for business, it's open for industry. And when you have a larger market, it allows for your industries to produce more, to increase their competitive advantage, to trade more, and ultimately to raise input and economic development, but the welfare of citizens and of people. And ultimately, that's what this AfCFTA agreement stands to provide to Rwanda and other countries that have also signed and ratified. Specifically to energy, it's an interesting question because Rwanda has put in place or has really prioritized energy development as one of its is part of the one of the export or rather investment priority sectors. So under the RDB, which Mr. Guy has mentioned, there's actually a number of incentives that are provided for investments within the energy sector. And these are anything from fiscal incentives such as low corporate income tax per year to waiver of customs duties. So really to encourage investments in this sector of energy. And there are a number of projects that have been identified by the RGB that are ready and primed for investment. And those are some of the projects that will be highlighted during the Rwanda Day Country Day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. We seem to be running out of time. There were a few questions that I'd just like the panelists to touch on. And I'm going to ask each panel member to give us their closing remarks around, what's the expectations now going forward, moving to next year's IATF event. What are your expectations, bearing in mind the context in which we are operating on currently? But I'd just like you to also touch in your closing remarks about, I know the African Union touched on the issue of the private sector, but this question has come up by Gerard Amangua. If your panelists can please touch on the role of the private sector and how important the private sector is in this process. Let's start off with Dr. Asare, please. Dr. Asare, can you hear us? Okay, we seem to have lost Dr. Asare. John, maybe I can come back to you, Mr. Rocha, with those closing comments, and if you can just touch on the role of the private sector in this process as well. John?
Thank you very much. First of all, with regards to our expectations for the IATF next year, we were actually very prepared this year to participate in this event. We were looking to mobilize about 400 companies across, I think, most of the priority sectors that have been designated by the IATF. And we look forward to a very strong presence and participation by South Africa in September next year. Our expectation is that we'll use the platform both virtually and physically, if that situation will allow us to do so, to build new relationships with both producers and buyers from around the continent and other parts of the world, but primarily from the continent, that will lead and facilitate our companies to do more and more business with one another. That's the first. Regarding the role of the private sector, I mean, it's clearly private sector has to be the main driver of, I say, 90% of the activity whenever we speak of intra-Africa trade. They are the producers, they are the service providers. Even when it comes to infrastructure, they are the ones who need to build the requisite infrastructure. They're the ones who need to provide the services. And in most instances, they're the ones that will have to make the necessary investments to ensure that the volumes of intra-Africa trade across the continent increases. So as South Africa, the processes that we have started with our companies is to work very closely with them. Number one, to identify barriers and challenges to trade and investment across the continent. Number two, to identify opportunities for investments and trade around the continent. So we also have a strong view around the need to develop regional value chains. I'll make an example. We are importing, for example, significant numbers of tires from around the world. And we know that West Africa produces a lot of natural rubber. Recently, with COVID-19, we saw the challenges we face with PPE sourcing from other parts of the world. And I think it's about time that we start looking as a continent seriously and making that transition from exporters of raw materials to actually adding value to raw materials within our bodies. So that's
Thank you.
one.
Thank you, John. I think that's a great point, John, to end on. Thank you so much for your input. We really appreciate your time as well. I'm going to move on to Mr. Zapmo. Can you give us, from an AU perspective, your sort of closing remarks? And I see there's also a question around, logistics and infrastructure support. How is the AU assisting countries with this issue around logistics and infrastructure support? Mr. Azapmo, if you can just give us your closing remarks and also just comment on that question as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, moderator. So for us, we see the IATF will certainly play an important post-pandemic recovery. And I think our colleague from Rwanda and South Africa touched on, the impact of COVID, which is also very well covered in the literature or in the various reports that we are getting. But beyond the COVID, I think the IATF is very important because, when you look at the African economy, you're looking at fragmented economies, disjointed, highly underperforming. And I think some of the reasons why we are underperforming were also discussed. Our economies are merely a survival of the colonial economic system. So we really see the IATF as, an initiative that will really contribute to this revival of the African economy, to defragmenting the African economy, as Commissioner Muchanga usually like to put it. That is to bring the African economies close to each other, and as the private sector, as they see the opportunities, as they see what they are capable of, they will be able to trade more and more. Because very often Africans are not aware of what is happening in other parts of the continent. So this will actually provide a platform to have that information available. Talking about the private sector, it's also an opportunity for the private sector in general, but more specifically looking at the SMEs, looking at the youth. And one thing we are doing, there was a question about what we're doing with respect to the private sector. We have a special program going to the IATF 2021, which is the AU Youth Startup Pavilion. Now, there would be 150 slots available for African youth startup to compete. And of course, those who will come up with great ideas will be selected. So we are coming up with those kind of initiatives to really support the African private sector and make sure that they actively participate in the trade fair. With respect to infrastructure, there are a number of programs that are being spearheaded by, whether it's the AU NEPAD, which is now the AU Development Agency, or by our colleagues from the Department of Infrastructure and Energy. But what we are doing also from a trade policy perspective, it is to ensure that as we complete the AfCFTA negotiations, that those other services sectors that relates to infrastructure are also liberalized. Because one of the issues, and I think our colleague from South Africa touched upon, is preferential treatment that we give to our own fellow Africans. So it is something that will be covered, whether it's under the trade in services negotiations, because there we will have going forward sectors such as constructions and engineering services, which will be liberalized. But also when it comes to movement of professionals, so that they can also move the continent and provide those services. So those are some of the things that we are looking at. Of course, logistics is part of transportation services, and it is already part of the negotiations. So what we are also doing is to encourage African countries to really understand the interconnectedness between the trade in goods and trade in services, and be able to lie some of those services sectors, because they will ultimately contribute to increasing production. Now, the other thing that will also help when it comes to logistic and infrastructure is investment. Now, In the second phase of the AfCFTA negotiations, we will be having a protocol on sustainable investment. It is also very important that the African private sector, that they participate in the negotiations by providing inputs, by informing their negotiators on what their priorities are, so that those are reflected in the various commitments that the countries will be making during that particular phase of the negotiations. So in conclusion, we really view the IATF not just as, something that will help the continent recover from the pandemic, but as something more important than that, because what is at stake here, it is not just to recover from from a pandemic that happened just like anything else could happen tomorrow, but it is to address the structural impediment that are holding the continent back. This is how we see the IATF. It is a tool that will play a role in achieving that structural transformation that we all would like to see taking place on the continent. I thank you once again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Jean. And, the conversation has just started, it seems, with IATF. I think that, half an hour or an hour is certainly not enough time to take all questions and to have a really robust debate around this issue. And that's why the IATF platform is definitely an important platform next year, where we're going to continue this conversation. And certainly from now till then, there'll be more discussions around this issue. And I do hope that everybody that participated in this panel session found it useful. There were some really important points made by all of our distinguished guests. And I do hope that many of you have learned a few things as to what and how important this AfCFTA is not just for the IATF platform, but certainly for the African continent at large. Thank you to the panel members for joining us, for giving us your time and your very valuable knowledge, which I'm sure all of us have benefited from. We're now going to go on to Anton from Rwanda, who's going to share with us the presentation. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it earlier, but the presentation on the potential benefits arising from country day participation from a Rwanda perspective. Anton, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, moderator, and good afternoon once again. First, let me really commend the panelists for a job well done. It's like you've said, it's not easy to share all that the AfCFTA has to benefit or has to provide to member states, but they've done a great job in highlighting the key points. And we look forward to picking up on this discussions and other subsequent discussions at the IATF event in September 2021. Rwanda, of course, as the host of the IATF 2021, is excited about the opportunity of hosting businesses, traders, investors from across the continent, policymakers to really come together and review the impact and the implementation that the AfCFTA can have and must have. Rwanda, of course, was the site for the signing of the AfCFTA in 2018. We've made great progress in the negotiations and in ensuring that we can start trading by next year. And so the IATF will come really at the right time to ensure that the benefits of the AfCFTA can become operational. Of course, the IATF 2021 will be hosted in Kigali at the beautiful Inari Convention Arena, which is one of Kigali's newest and largest convention centers in the city. Some of the things that we've put together and we're excited to be able to share with you here today and definitely on the ground next year is a Rwanda-specific investment forum highlighting some of the specific opportunities available in Rwanda for investment, for trade. There'll be a country pavilion highlighting not only trade and investment opportunities, but opportunities in other sectors. There were some who raised questions around energy. There'll be some in sports and culture. cuisine examples of what it is to really be in Rwanda. And of course, investment tours. And I think these are important. I believe the gentleman from the AU referenced to the investment protocol that is going to be part of the AfCFTA Phase 2 negotiations, and that's going to be critical to ensuring that Africa can become a coordinated business entity moving forward. Now, Rwanda sitting at the heart of Africa and really being a committed Pan-Africanist country really makes it stand out for this IATF 2021. Not only has it led at levels, whether at the AU or EAC through chairmanship of His Excellency the President, but really also leading on Africa-related initiatives, whether that's Smart Africa or Youth Connect initiative that seeks to bring together Africans and really to talk about our problems and find solutions from within. And that's what the IATF and the AfCFTA really are meant to be, African solutions for African problems. Of course, we've continued to contribute significantly to peace and prosperity, whether that's through the UN or really also leading in key roles in finance and in international organizations. Rwanda, again, sits at the center of Africa and has good links, trade links and relations with a number of regions and countries from East Africa to COMESA to Europe and America. But what's most important, and I think has been touched on by the panelists quite well, is the opportunities that abound from an African-wide free trade area, really providing those preferential tariff rates, eliminating those NTBs, which the World Bank and other organizations have noted will be the significant barrier to implementing effectively the AfCFTA. And these are the type of conversations we need to be able to have next year during the IATF. Rwanda, again, sits right in the middle of Africa, surrounded by a number of countries we enjoy relations with, from Uganda to Burundi to Tanzania to DRC, substantial, and where the trade links are transport facilitation to be able to
Okay, it seems like we've lost sound with Antoinette. I'm just going to ask the technical team to see if we can get him back on. Seems like we're not getting him on. Whilst we're waiting, there's been a few questions that have come through, and apologies for not being able to respond to all these questions online. We will send you responses to these questions. We've committed to that. The other thing is that the discussion has been recorded, and it will be available on the IATF virtual trade fair website if you need to get hold of that discussion. I think it will be quite important. Can we get Anton back? Anton, can you hear us? We seem to have lost sound from Anton. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think that unfortunately we've been affected today by all these technical glitches. My apologies for that. But I'm sure you'll agree with me that in the main, the discussion has been quite important. It's an important discussion that we had. We've had some really distinguished guests that joined us today. Thank you very much to all the speakers that have sacrificed their time to being with us. I'd also like to thank all of you who's joined us today. And thanks for your questions. We really are going to look forward to seeing you again, if not online, but certainly in Rwanda in 2021. So thank you very much for joining us, and take care until we see each other again. Thank you.
Joignez-vous à la plus grande foire commerciale et d'investissement en Afrique au Rwanda. La foire commerciale intra-africaine vous donne accès à plus de 1100 exposants, 10 000 visiteurs et acheteurs et plus de 5000 délégués de plus de 55 pays. Participez à des transactions commerciales et d'investissement d'une valeur de 40 milliards de dollars américains au moment où les entreprises et les gouvernements se réunissent pour explorer les opportunités d'affaires lors de l'exposition internationale. Organisée par la Banque africaine d'import-export et ses précieux partenaires. IATF 2021. Transformer l'Afrique.
Junte-se à maior feira de comércio e investimento da África, no Ruanda. A Feira Internacional Intra-Africana dá-lhe acesso a mais de 1.100 expositores e 10 mil visitantes e compradores, bem como a mais de 5 mil delegados da conferência de mais de 55 países. Participa em acordos de comércio e investimento avaliados em 40 mil milhões de dólares norte-americanos. Empresas e governos juntam-se com vista a explorar oportunidades de negócio e de estabelecimento de contactos na exposição internacional. Organizada pelo Banco Africano de Exportação e Importação e os seus parceiros premium, a IATF 2021, transformando a África.